Hey everyone, welcome to Take 5 with Tom, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about one of my favorite things, lighting, and specifically I'm going to talk to you about how I get pretty decent separation between the dark clothes that I wear in these videos and this black background. Now keep in mind that the principles and the techniques that I'm going to talk about are generally applicable to pretty much any lighting scenario that you can imagine. So there should be some useful stuff in here, so let's have some fun and check it out. So the big learning moment for me when it came to lighting was the realization that the best lighting setups happen when you start with a blank canvas. No lights at all. And the reason for that is because you're painting with light. You're adding lights to the subject to achieve the look and the mood that you want, essentially. And that's what we're gonna do here today. I'm just gonna take my lighting setup that I have here to achieve this look and just add lights to it one at a time, so that you can see what the effect of each light is and how they build to deliver the look that I was after. Now keep in mind that you don't need fancy lights to do this kind of thing. You can do this with desk lamps or clamp lamps from the hardware store. Get some shower curtain liner from Walmart, cut it up and use it as a diffuser. You can do all kinds of creative stuff. You don't have to invest a lot of money in lights to achieve these kinds of looks. In fact, I would argue that it's a test of your creativity to start with the least amount of equipment that you can and see what you can do to achieve those looks. And I'm just shooting with an iPhone 14 as well. So there's a lot of really great stuff out there for you to start with. And let's go ahead and get started and show you what this lighting breakdown looks like. Okay, so the first light in this setup is something called the key light. Now the key light is the main lighting source. It could be anything. It could be a window, it could be a desk lamp. In this case, it's a Lume Cube LED panel light that's set to about 95%. Now there is one other thing that I do to this light in this setup that I'm gonna talk about later that gives it a little bit more contrast and definition and character to the subject once it's applied. But for right now, I just wanted you to see the raw key light with nothing on it and no treatments. Okay, so the second light in my setup, now this is a 3-point lighting setup where I've got key, this new light that I've just introduced called the fill light, and something called the backlight that we're gonna talk about in a minute. But the job of the fill light in this situation is to fill in this side of my face, the opposite side of the key. And the reason that I have it set for a lower intensity than the key light, in this case the fill light is set to 25%, the key light is set to about 95%. The reason that I have the fill light at a lower intensity is because I want some contrast over here. I want to give some shape and some character to the subject. I don't want it to be flat, and I want to make sure that that character and that dimensionality comes through. Okay, so now I've got the third light turned on in our 3-point lighting setup. We've got the key, the fill, and now the backlight. And as the name suggests, the purpose of the backlight is to provide some additional light to the back of the subject to help the subject stand apart from the background. And what you should be seeing here is some additional light on my shoulder, my head, and my body to help me stand out from the black background. So far I've been talking about the classic 3-point setup where you've got key, fill, and backlight. Well, I've just added a fourth light, something called the hair kicker, which is used again for further separating the subject from the background. In this case, it's used to highlight my hair and provide a little bit more background separation. So I've been talking a lot about separation from the background, and it's especially important when you're dealing with a black fabric background like I am here. You sometimes get folds and creases and other imperfections in the fabric that you don't want to appear in the final shot. So the way that you get that background to really fall off is through something called shallow depth of field or depth of focus. And that really happens when you've got the subject really nicely in focus, but the background is kind of blurry and kind of falling off. So the way to achieve that, there's 3 things that you can do to achieve that. The way I achieve it is stand as far away from the background as you can. Make sure that your camera has the widest aperture that it possibly can. In this case, I'm using 1.8 on my iPhone 14 through the Blackmagic camera app. And the third thing is use a low ISO because that's going to deliver the highest level of contrast. So what you're trying to do there with ISO, and that's the sensitivity of the camera to light. So the lower the setting, the darker and more contrasty the image is basically going to be. So I have mine set right now to ISO 100, and that's the lowest I dare go and still can get a crisp image with the lighting setup that I have and make the background fall off. Now, I talked about some additional treatments that I do to my lights to provide a little bit more contrast and a little bit more character. I think they give a little bit more depth. They also help knock the shadows off the background a little bit. Are things called screens. Now, I just put a screen on my key light, and what you should see happening here is more even light, a little bit more contrast on the right side of my face. Okay, so here we are. We've got the final lighting setup. We've got a key light with a screen on it. We've got a fill light with a screen on it. Again, those screens are there to provide some additional definition, knock some shadows down, provide a little bit more contrast and character to the shot. We've got the backlight. We've got the hair kicker going. So we've got good separation from the background. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is I've used a product called black foil for years, and basically it's just like an aluminum foil with a matte black kind of coating on it. And the great thing about it is that you can use it for all kinds of different things to block light or shape light or whatever. In this particular case, what I've done is I've created some sort of makeshift barn doors for my backlight and for my hair kicker to sort of minimize the light leakage onto the background, because it's a very important thing to try to do in these scenarios where you're trying to shoot with a monochromatic background. You don't want an uneven background. There's probably a little bit of unevenness going on with contrast and stuff with this background, but for the most part, drops off pretty well. One of the other things that was sort of interesting in this setup was that I had some transient light that was bouncing off of boxes and metal shelving on my right side over here. So I hung a piece of black photographic background paper to sort of absorb that extra light and not reflect anything back. That gives a little bit more definition over here and darkens things up. So those are things that you want to keep in mind. Look, I hope you found this useful. If you did, please like and subscribe. Check the description for links to products and other little notes that I might have put in there about the setup that I've got here today. And I look forward to seeing you on another Take 5 with Tom.